How can you see into my eyes like open doors, leading you down into my core, where I become so numb without a soul?
This tale shall go into the accounts of my encounter with Osiris, whom I imparted my early knowledge of necromancy to that led him to become the legendary god of Egypt and judge of the dead. Yes, I have been to the astral region of the Esprit, which is the spiritual domain. It is not like the mortal realm. There is no solid ground. It is an open landscape of colors that overlap each other like vapors all around you, above and below you as well. They themselves have no physical form per se, but are like little wisps of light, each a color in accordance to the element they align with. They have schools and stuff like we do, but the buildings and walls are made of elemental forces set at different densities. Osiris was an unknowing friend at one point, considering in my travels across time in astral form it was I who took my knowledge of necromancy and infused it into the scepter of Osiris within the green jewel that is fixated onto it near the top. I set it into place to play out an image of how to use one's mana or inner mystic energy and project it outward and connect to the spiritual residual energy of someone and call it back into the physical realm. He was expecting a scepter that could raise an army, I think, but all I knew is that I knew the one thing that had been forgotten and lost in that era, which was how to connect and commune with the dead. That was why I had brought the knowledge there to begin with. When I stepped through the portal window from my era to his, I emerged an underground temple long buried beneath the sands except for a small portion that had not been completely submerged yet. He stumbled in as I was coming out, dehydrated and sick with fever from scorpion or a cobra's venom, one of the two. The mixture of the two maybe is what caused it, but however the case, he was able to see me. He asked for help as he collapsed from the heat. While he slept, he and I communed with each other through dream images. He showed me what had happened and that his brother Seti had taken his kingdom and sent his guards to lure him into a house plagued supposedly by a shadow spirit called Nazgul then. The guards had a sense of guilt and told him he had to go into exile and never return, for if he did the guard and their families would be killed. So he left, and the guard came up with some story about how they hacked him into many pieces so that the remains couldn't be identified. He wandered for days until he stumbled upon an entrance to a hidden temple. He thought if he entered, some wandering spirit of a grave robber who died from the traps within would surely kill him if he entered. He asked me if I was the spirit of some great king and if I had an army of warriors he could return and take his kingdom back with. I told him when he awakens to go deeper into the temple, and there he would find a green jeweled scepter inside the main chamber and retrieve it, for it would hold the power to command the dead. He asked if I was the ruler of the realm of the dead to be capable of such authority. I told him yes, I was Anubis. Then he drifted deeper past the REM stage of dreams into a more restful sleep. I returned to my era and located the scepter of Osiris that was on display at a museum and projected its outline into a copied astral form and took that back with me. As he stirred from his sleep before he woke up, I appeared again to him, this time handing him the copied image of the scepter, and said, "Remember, find the scepter and receive the power to command the dead." As he awoke and began to search the catacombs, I searched for the scepter that matched the image I brought back with me and attached my astral form to it. Within the reflections of light within the gemstone, I etched the basic process of raising a spirit and calling it back into the mortal realm and set it to repeat itself at the command of the wielder of the scepter's will. So I guess you could consider him a friend as well. There are many other encounters, but as you can see, each one is quite a long story to tell. This next section is the translation of the first seal, which I shall walk you through how this came to pass. The first seal was broken by my deciphering of the Nag Hammurabi tale of the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirits. In their form writing language, the authors use single-word phrases to highlight what aspect of many different levels of life they are speaking of. They include a legend of reference at the beginning of their transcriptions. For example, the book begins by going through an account of the subjects involved in the tale. such as the word silence to them means spirit or one who has recently passed away, but the conjunction of the word into the silent of silences is not describing one who has passed but one who sends many of them or a murderer. When it speaks of the many titles given to the king, the father, the bringer of the silence of silences, the one whose name shall not be spoken, this is a reference to the king's title being deposed and his throne taken from him for atrocious crimes of the death of many people. Things like this are key factors in many cultures' language styles when written, yet they are not identical in their pattern and change their method from culture to culture. Now to decipher the first seal we shall take two tales and merge them into one story whose content support the other tale both chronologically and in storyline structure as well. We shall review the section that speaks of the tale in the Book of Spirits where it goes into detail of Abraxas and the creation of the demiurge, Domidon Doxamedonian and the subjugation of the Aeons into the Ogdoad stones and then begins to go into a description of a weapon of the divine light. There it trails off in the storyline because of a large section of the story that had eroded with the passing of time and worn away the writings. So they say, but they also say that they're unsure whether it was erosion because it seems as if the missing section was intentionally excluded or even removed from it altogether. Now we turn to the second tale of the 7 Anunnaki tablets of creation, mainly tablet 1, and we shall search for a section that describes how the young warrior is brought before the king by Mumi, and the king describes how the adversary's forces have toppled his throne and how the young warrior, who is Marduk or Marduk, will be blessed with the sword of spirits, the storm weapon, and the king blesses the sword and gives it authority to strike in vengeance against the ones who have overtaken his throne, but warns that if he should fail in his quest then the blessed items the king has given him will become cursed items that shall know no limits of grief and sorrow, for the king lingers in spirit and has refused to cross into the realm of spirits until his vengeance has been handed down upon the ones who have brought this about. That if he does not succeed in his quest for the king in 3 days then the spirit of the king shall be trapped in the realm of the living never knowing peace, and that he shall become a curse upon the land, and I believe it is here that the spirit sword is referred to as the demiurge blade. Then the tale shifts back, as once again in the 7 tablets of creation, large sections of the tale are suspiciously missing, and it picks up again speaking of Inanna and her descent into the underworld and Abraxas being appointed as a guide for her from the spiritual world. Then the tale leaves off again to the epics of Gilgamesh where Inanna changes titles to that of Ishtar and continues her descent into the underworld and the 9 gates. Now through this cross-translation you must use a style of enhanced perception that can sense a person's intentions by merely reading the words they write. Apply this to the translation between the texts to find exactly where one tale ends and the other picks up, as well as being able to discern the meaning of the words and what they are trying to describe by knowing their language's form of image representation when writing about it. Like how in Egyptian hieroglyphs pictures of animals mean a specific type of object or process in the rising and setting of the sun, for example. If you have a deep interest in art then you may have adapted this talent unknowingly, as it is the same skill art critics use to find the artist's intention and emotional state that lies behind the painting. There are 7 cultural texts around the world in different cultures. They each tell a similar version of the same story. The ancient texts are as follows: the Holy Book of the Great Invisible Spirits, Nag Hammurabi, the 7 Anunnaki Tablets of Creation, the Marabatu and the Battle of the 10 Kings, Rigveda texts, the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Battle of Marduk against the forces of Tiamat, the Tale of the 9 Emperor Gods of Asia, see video reference if easy or on my channel. The Greek Titanaki and the battle against chaos, the Norse legend of the war between the Eza and the Vanir. These are not arranged in order, and the 9 Emperor Gods tale of the Monkey King is not included, but they are essentially the tales of each of the 9 Adams that came before us, their generalized description of their kingdoms and their destructions as well. Take notice in Revelations how when the Lamb who is found worthy steps up to the throne to take the scroll from the hand of God, its descriptive meaning feels as if he is accepting this scroll from the grip of a corpse almost, just my interpretation I guess. This could be utilized by the adversary. I realize that, just as it may be utilized by the righteous, but I am the author of the grimoires of power. If you know the books I speak of, then you should know that I have no concern over the good or evil intentions of those who find my knowledge. Only one rule do I ever impose, and that is to never use the knowledge you attain against me or the book from which that knowledge was gained. Usually some elaborate death threat follows next, but you get the point.